Hi, my name is Julia. I'd like to share a story about how my dad became addicted to Instagram and how it ruined our family life. It all started quite innocently. I got my first iPhone on my 13th birthday. I was dreaming about that phone for my entire childhood, and it took ages to convince my parents to get one. Gosh, they were stubborn and cheap. They just kept repeating, "You don't need an iPhone, your Samsung Galaxy is just fine. We're not millionaires and I can't afford to buy you every new phone that comes out." I was running out of ideas on how to convince them, but one evening during dinner, I just couldn't take it anymore and burst out crying and sobbing about how I feel left out because I'm the only kid without a brand new phone. I explained that it was bad enough that we lived in a smaller house than the other kids and that my parents drove fancy cars like BMW or Porsche when we went to school in a Ford minivan. I started screaming hysterically and the rest of the evening was a blur, but I think this was the moment they finally understood how important this was in my life. Finally! My parents told me that they felt ashamed to have left me in such underprivileged conditions and that to prevent future meltdowns I should wait until my 13th birthday to see what I receive. My 13th birthday was coming up soon. I just could not wait. My parents and I were on the same page. My parents said that to save money so that they could afford my big gift, I would need to have my birthday in the backyard. I heard my mom and dad fighting about money a lot that month and how they could barely afford to pay the bills. I decided that as long as I would get what I wanted, having the party in our backyard was not too bad. My parents did all the typical stuff, like balloons, friends, Grandma Greta, and lots of presents. However, knowing that I was going to get the new iPhone made opening other presents feel like a waste of time. All of a sudden, everything else felt like unneeded trash to me. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, I opened a smaller rectangular box, and this was it. The only thing in the world that I wanted was in my hands. It wasn't the newest iPhone, but it still had an Apple logo, no plug for headphones, and at this point, I was not in the mood to throw a tantrum. So I thanked my parents and said goodbye to my friends and headed into my room so that I could spend the rest of the weekend on my phone. I was sure that from that day forward, my life will change like never before. You wouldn't even imagine how right I was. Unfortunately, it was changed my life for the worst. And had I known about the devastating effects of that gift, I would have demanded something different for my 13th birthday. What I'm going to tell you now is very personal and shocking, so please don't tell anyone else. On the first night, I installed all the important apps like TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. All of my friends could see that I had an iPhone because I was sending iMessages and the text turned blue instead of green. When I noticed some kid couldn't receive an iMessage, it meant that their parents were cheap and didn't buy them an iPhone. So I tried to make them feel bad by saying, "Why can't I send you an iMessage from my iPhone?" Finally, I had the self-esteem and validation I always wished for, and I could admit to myself that I belonged with the cool kids. My favorite thing about my iPhone was Instagram account. At first, I posted a bunch of my cats and dogs photos because they would get me many hearts. Later, the cats and dogs got boring, so I started to post some selfies. It was not easy since my pictures were nothing like the other accounts, and I looked really ugly compared to all the other girls. I realized that I needed to add filters, and that way everyone would think that I was pretty. Eventually, even the filters were not enough because I wasn't hanging out with cool people. I didn't go anywhere and my parents were not rich, just felt like my life was so simple and charmless. Slowly, the iPhone that had brought me so much meaning and joy was beginning to make me feel sad. My dad, who is very observant, knew that something was up. He respects my privacy, but when he noticed that I stopped using my phone all the time, he asked me to go for a walk with him. He wanted to hear how I was doing. I can talk to my dad about anything, and he won't get upset, so I confessed that the thing I was hoping to change my life was impossible, that I didn't know how to make my life look amazing like all of the other girls. Dad seemed like he understood, but then he seemed a little angry that I was complaining about my present. He opened up and told me that he had to take a second job just to afford it, and that if it no longer brought me the joy I was expecting, perhaps he could use it for a while. I agreed that it would be for the best. A few days later, my dad took over my Instagram profile and started posting his own photos there. My dad is a quick learner. He was amused that he could find his old classmates, fraternity friends, even ex-girlfriends. I was pretty happy to see that he was having so much fun, and I would even admit that our little Instagram project brought us closer to each other. Seemed like innocent fun until he took a little too far. He became a master of Instagramming and showed me all the filters, hashtags, emojis, and other stuff to make my profile awesome. However, When I took a closer look at my dad's account, I noticed that he was posting had nothing to do with reality. He was posting some pic of a fancy car with hashtag my baby, or some travel agency photos claiming that he is on an exotic holiday. I was terrified because all of my friends followed that account and they know that my dad has never even left our state and that the entire profile was a lie. One day, my dad posted a picture from a VIP lounge in the city with hashtag lunch break like a baller. I knew that my dad was probably only in that lounge to repair something, but it seemed like even he was believing the fantasy. Young girls were posting comments under his profile, and I wondered if they were making fun of him or if they didn't realize it was all fake. It probably would be fine if he stopped there. I heard that dads sometimes have a phase called midlife crisis. It was all weird, but okay. But this was far from the end of his wrongdoing. One day, I took a look inside my dad's direct messages, and I also noticed that he was talking to other women in a way that my mother would certainly not appreciate. When I read his DMs, he told them the most absurd lies, like he was the CEO of a tech company, and he will shower them in riches if they would just come to meet him. Dad even mentioned the iPhone that he had bought me and how I didn't appreciate it. My dad would send them pictures of himself from his 30s and say that they were current, when in reality, he was bald, overweight, and with no social life. He was also begging the women to meet with him for a date, saying that what happens on Instagram stays on Instagram, whatever that means. I thought it was extremely pathetic, but didn't realize what a problem it was until my mom inquired about the password to the iPhone. This is when everyone became hostile. I told my mom that I could barely use my phone anymore and that if she had questions about it, she better ask Dad. At the same time, my dad was getting more and more nervous every time I used my phone. He'd be looking over my shoulder, asking me to hurry up in a nervous voice, as if he was trying to hide something. Once I returned the phone to him, he would disappear to the bathroom for hours at a time, which was weird. I felt so guilty and scared to tell my mom the truth. But when he started chatting with my friend's older sisters, I decided that the entire situation had gone too far and that we needed to have a talk. I tried to talk to him, reason with him, and show him that maybe he was developing some form of addiction. He became super offended, yelled at me, and told me that if I felt phones were so dangerous to the family, then he was changing the password and that I wasn't allowed to use the phone ever again. He also told me that if I told my mom about our talk, I'd be grounded for the rest of the school year. A few days later, my mom asked me to set up an Instagram account for her. She knew that my father was up to no good. I helped my mom, and when she found his account, she lost her mind. Mom called her brother, who is a lawyer, and told him about the entire situation, requesting he help her to file for a divorce. When my dad came home and heard the news, I couldn't believe his reaction. He said that he was sorry, that he felt that way, but that he could pack his things and leave that same evening. Now that he was free, he would find real love with a much younger woman and start a new family so that he could forget about us all. I felt hopeless and devastated. Weeks passed and my mom was brokenhearted. She told me that she was sure my dad would take the request for a divorce as a wake-up call and quit all of his nonsense immediately. My mother kept following my dad's Instagram account, and sure enough, within a few days of leaving, he started posting photos with his new girlfriend. Hashtag true love, hashtag second life, hashtag pretty girl. I had to look at the profile myself and couldn't believe it. It was my friend Judy's older sister, who was at least 35 years younger. How could he go with such a stupid young girl? And how was he affording to take her to such nice places? Didn't he realize that she didn't really love him? I couldn't stand it anymore, so I called my dad to tell him how I felt. When he picked up the phone, he confessed that on one hand, he missed me, but on the other hand, he had not been attracted to my mother for many years because she wore pajamas all day and didn't care about her appearance. He said that he loves her as the mother of his children, but just couldn't be romantic with a woman like that. He said that when I'm older, I will understand many things, but for right now, I should just focus on my schoolwork, swimming lessons, and friends. He also said that he would be so happy if someday I could come and have dinner with him and the love of his life. I agreed to come over the following weekend. My mother was furious that I had joined them for dinner, but I told her that I'm not going to get into the business between her and my dad. I waited on the front steps to our house to be picked up when suddenly a cherry red convertible with hip-hop music blasting arrived in the front of my house. I didn't see my dad, but I recognized the person driving the car as his new girlfriend. My mother was looking through the window crying, but I still got into her convertible. She said that she felt bad at how she destroyed my family, but that when she becomes my stepmom, she will be like an older sister who teaches me about boys, style, shopping, and makeup. She said that my father told her how boring my mom was, and that if she had anything to say about it, she'd make sure that I didn't end up as lame. My stomach hurt when she said those terrible things about my mother, but I had to accept the fact that she was going to be family, and I chose not to argue with her. Within a few months, I was amazed at the photos my dad and his girlfriend were posting. They bought an amazing new house, matching fancy cars, and started to actually travel all over the world. It turned out that his new girlfriend actually decided to use my dad's passion for Instagram, and they posted pictures of brands that paid them a lot of money. I hate to admit that they did a great job. My dad was even generous enough to pay off my mom's part of her house, and honestly speaking, financially, we did better than ever before, but our family was lost. I still don't know what to make of it all. Indeed, I lost my family. I have a stepmother that is 5 years older than me. My mother is alone, but my dad seems to be involved and absolutely happy. This is why I need to share this story with you. I need to know what you think of the entire situation and what I should do, what I should have done differently, or maybe you have some stories of your own. Anyway, guys, please subscribe to the channel and I'll make sure to read every single one of your comments.